She never imagined that a single wish, whispered on an ordinary night, would change the entire direction of her life. At that moment, she wasn't powerful, confident, or spiritually awakened. She was tired. Tired of surviving instead of living. Tired of pretending everything was fine while her world quietly crumbled behind closed doors. Her life looked normal from the outside, but inside, she was carrying years of silent disappointment. Bills that never stopped coming. Dreams that had been postponed for so long they almost felt embarrassing to remember. A constant feeling that life was happening for everyone else, except her. She had learned how to smile through exhaustion, how to downplay her struggles, how to accept less than she deserved because believing in more felt dangerous. Hope had betrayed her before. And yet, something inside her refused to die completely. That night, before sleep took her, she made one wish. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just honest. A wish that came from the deepest part of her soul, the part that still believed the universe could hear her, even if she didn't fully believe it herself. Before we continue, if you believe in manifestation, in unseen forces aligning behind the scenes, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below, I believe in my manifestation. Your energy matters here. Her mornings didn't begin with inspiration or hope. They began with tension in her chest and a quiet fear that followed her out of bed. Before her feet even touched the floor, her mind was already calculating expenses, replaying conversations, worrying about things she couldn't yet control. The day hadn't started, but she already felt behind. She worked harder than most people around her, yet her effort never seemed to translate into progress. Long hours, dedication, responsibility, none of it changed her reality. Promotions went to others. Recognition passed her by. It felt as if she was stuck in place while the world moved forward without her permission. Money was a constant source of anxiety. Not because she wanted luxury, but because she wanted stability. Each bill felt heavier than the last. Each notification from her bank account triggered a silent wave of panic. No matter how carefully she planned, something was always missing. There were moments of quiet embarrassment she never spoke about. Declining invitations because she couldn't afford to go. Making excuses so people wouldn't ask questions. Smiling while feeling small inside. Her world slowly shrank, and she pretended it was by choice. At night, exhaustion wasn't enough to bring sleep. Her body was tired, but her mind refused to rest. Thoughts circled endlessly, memories of past mistakes, fear of the future, and the painful question she avoided asking out loud, is this really all my life is going to be? She tried to stay positive. She tried gratitude. She tried telling herself that others had it worse. But suppressing frustration didn't heal it. It only buried it deeper. And deep inside, she felt disconnected from the life she once dreamed of. Comparisons hurt the most. Watching others build careers, travel, find peace, and talk about opportunities she couldn't even imagine accessing. Every comparison quietly reinforced a belief she never consciously chose, that abundance was meant for others, not for her. Her confidence eroded slowly. Not from one big failure, but from years of feeling unseen, unheard, and unsupported. She stopped expecting miracles. She stopped imagining better outcomes. Survival became her default mode. Still, a small part of her resisted that resignation. A quiet inner voice whispered that this was not her final chapter. She didn't know how things would change, only that something inside her refused to fully give up. And while she believed she was simply enduring another difficult season, she didn't realize that the universe had already been paying attention to every thought, every emotion, every silent request she carried within her. That quiet inner voice didn't shout. It didn't demand immediate action. It simply stayed. Persistent. Gentle. Almost stubborn. Even in her lowest moments, something inside her kept whispering that this wasn't the end of her story, even though she had no idea how a different chapter could possibly begin. She didn't wake up one day suddenly inspired. The shift came slowly, through moments that seemed insignificant at first. A late night scrolling on her phone. A video she almost skipped. A sentence that landed differently, as if it had been waiting for her specifically. The message spoke about alignment before results. About identity before circumstances. About how the universe responds not just to words, but to the emotional state behind them. Normally, she would have dismissed it as another empty promise. But this time, she didn't. What caught her attention wasn't the promise of instant miracles, it was the idea that her current reality wasn't punishment, but feedback. That thought alone unsettled something deep inside her. If her life was feedback, then maybe she wasn't broken. Maybe she was simply operating from old patterns. She listened again. And again. Then she searched for more. Videos turned into articles. Articles turned into a book recommendation. Each piece echoed the same principle: change the inner world, and the outer world follows. One night, feeling both skeptical and curious, she decided to try something simple. She grabbed an old notebook, nothing special, and placed it on the table. She didn't know why, but it felt important to start physically, not just mentally. She titled the first page Journal Manifestation. The words felt strange under her pen. Bold. Almost presumptuous. Her logical mind immediately protested. Who do you think you are? But another part of her, quieter, wiser, told her to keep going. She was instructed to write in the present tense, as if her desires were already real. Her hand hesitated before every sentence. Writing abundance while feeling scarcity felt dishonest. Writing peace while feeling anxious felt absurd. Still, she wrote. I am supported. I am safe. I am open to abundance. Reading the words back made her uncomfortable. But beneath that discomfort was something new, awareness. For the first time, she noticed how unfamiliar positive certainty felt. That realization alone was powerful. She didn't feel instant relief. There were no fireworks. But something subtle happened that night. A shift not in circumstances, but in perception. The universe hadn't suddenly changed, but she had opened a door she didn't know existed. And unknowingly, by putting intention into words, she had just taken her first conscious step out of survival mode, and into co-creation. At first, nothing dramatic happened. No sudden money. No life-changing call. Just days unfolding the same way they always had. And yet, something felt different beneath the surface. She kept writing in her journal manifestation, even when part of her wondered if she was just talking to herself. The first sign was so small she almost dismissed it. A bill she expected to be overdue was suddenly extended without penalty. A minor relief, barely noticeable, except that it arrived exactly when she had written the night before, I am supported in unexpected ways. She told herself it was coincidence. It had to be. Her rational mind needed explanations, logic, proof. Still, she wrote again that night. Gratitude this time. Careful gratitude, as if she didn't want to scare the moment away. Then came another signal. Someone offered help without being asked. A conversation led to information she didn't know she needed. A door didn't open, but it cracked, just enough to let light in. Doubt walked beside hope. Every small manifestation was followed by an inner debate. Am I imagining this? Am I forcing meaning where there is none? The old identity resisted change, clinging to familiarity, even if familiarity was painful. Some days, nothing happened at all. Those were the hardest. The silence felt louder than the signs. She questioned whether she was doing it right, whether consistency mattered, whether belief was supposed to feel this fragile. Still, she showed up. Night after night. Writing in the present tense. Visualizing outcomes she couldn't yet see. Training her mind to expect instead of fear. It wasn't faith, it was discipline. Then something unexpected occurred. A message. An invitation. An opportunity that hadn't existed before. Not the miracle she dreamed of, but proof of movement. Her heart raced. Excitement mixed with fear. Because signs require response. And responding meant risking disappointment again. She realized something crucial in that moment: the universe wasn't testing whether manifestation worked. It was testing whether she would stay aligned even when results were subtle. Before we continue, let me ask you something important. Have you ever almost given up on something, only to receive a sign right after? If yes, comment below. I have been tested by life. That choice, to trust the process instead of demanding proof, anchored her. And quietly, without announcement, the universe took note. Just when she began to trust that the universe was gently rearranging things in her favor, everything collapsed at once. The news arrived without warning, delivered in a calm and neutral voice that made the impact even harder to absorb. She lost her job. In a single moment, the fragile sense of safety she had started to rebuild vanished. Fear returned instantly, stronger and more familiar than hope. Her chest tightened, her thoughts spiraled, and every old belief rushed back to the surface. This is what happens when you believe in things you can't see, her mind whispered. The timing felt cruel, almost intentional, as if the universe itself was pulling a test she hadn't studied for. She questioned everything she had been practicing. The journaling. The affirmations. The quiet trust she was learning to cultivate. It felt as though the universe had gone silent the moment she needed reassurance the most. Doubt filled the space where faith had just begun to grow. That night, she opened her journal manifestation with trembling hands. The pages that once felt hopeful now felt heavy with expectation. She reread the words she had written: abundance, stability, freedom, and for the first time, they felt painfully distant from her reality. Tears came, not just from fear of the future, but from the meaning she attached to the loss. Losing the job felt like confirmation of her deepest insecurity, that life was unstable, that security was temporary, and that trusting the unseen was dangerous. She considered stopping everything. Closing the journal. Letting go of the practice. Returning to survival mode, where expectations were low and disappointment was familiar. At least there, she knew what to expect. But beneath the fear, another realization emerged. This moment felt different from past failures. This pain wasn't empty, it was confronting. It forced her to choose between reverting to her old identity or standing in the one she was trying to become. She remembered something she had written weeks earlier, almost casually: the universe rearranges before it delivers. At the time, it sounded comforting. Now, it sounded like a warning she was finally understanding. So instead of erasing her affirmations, she rewrote them. Not with confidence, but with commitment. She wrote even as her voice shook, even as her mind resisted. Persistence replaced certainty. In that moment, something shifted quietly. The universe wasn't taking from her, it was asking her a question. Will you trust the process even when the evidence disappears? And with her pen still moving across the page, she answered without words. The change didn't arrive as a miracle from the outside. It began quietly, internally, the morning after everything had fallen apart. She woke up without answers, without guarantees, but with a strange sense of clarity. For the first time, she realized that nothing else could be taken from her. And that realization gave her an unexpected sense of power. She stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she felt different. There was no excitement yet, no certainty. But there was resolve. A decision had been made somewhere deep inside her. She would no longer identify as someone waiting to be saved. That morning, she spoke words out loud that felt unfamiliar in her mouth. Not because they were false, but because they were new. She said them slowly, deliberately, even while doubt lingered. I am capable. I am supported. I am becoming the person my future requires. She returned to her journal manifestation, not as someone asking for rescue, but as someone claiming authorship over her life. The tone of her writing changed. Less desperation. More authority. She no longer wrote hoping the universe would fix things, she wrote as if alignment was already happening. Her posture shifted before her circumstances did. She walked differently. She spoke with more intention. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. These changes were subtle, almost invisible to others, but internally, they were monumental. Instead of obsessing over what she had lost, she focused on who she was becoming. Each day, she asked herself one simple question: what would my future self do today? And then she acted accordingly, even when fear tried to interrupt. Small victories began to appear. Not dramatic breakthroughs, but confirmations. A productive conversation. A spark of inspiration. A sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. These moments didn't scream success, but they whispered alignment. She noticed that her thoughts were no longer looping around fear as often. When anxiety appeared, she didn't fight it, she redirected it. Back to intention. Back to identity. Back to the version of herself she was consciously choosing. Affirmations became less about convincing and more about remembering. Remembering that abundance wasn't something she needed to chase, it was something she needed to allow. An allowance required trust in who she was becoming. By choosing this new identity daily, even without evidence, she unknowingly crossed a threshold. The universe responds quickly to clarity. And once she stopped sending mixed signals, momentum began to build. The manifestation didn't arrive all at once, and it didn't look the way she had imagined in her weakest moments. It came through alignment, timing, and a sequence of decisions that only made sense looking back. What once felt impossible now began to unfold with a calm certainty, as if the universe had been preparing the stage all along. An opportunity appeared, not loud, not flashy, but perfectly aligned with who she had become. It required courage, trust, and action. This time, she didn't hesitate. She recognized the feeling immediately. This wasn't luck. This was resonance. What followed felt surreal. Income stabilized, then expanded. Doors opened where walls once stood. People who had never noticed her before suddenly saw her value. And the most surprising part wasn't the success itself, it was how natural it felt to receive it. She realized that the external abundance was simply catching up to an internal shift that had already happened weeks before. The universe wasn't changing her life, it was responding to the identity she had embodied consistently, even when no one was watching. There was a moment, quiet and personal, when she sat alone and reflected on how far she had come. Not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. She no longer felt like someone chasing stability. She felt like someone who expected alignment. She opened her journal manifestation and reread the first pages. The shaky handwriting. The hesitant affirmations. The doubt hidden between the lines. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain this time, but from recognition. Everything she was living now had once existed only in ink and intention. The dream she once whispered had materialized, not as fantasy, but as reality shaped through discipline, belief, and trust. It wasn't magic. It was co-creation. The universe had moved, but only because she moved first. What amazed her most was not the result, but the process. The realization that her future had been built quietly, daily, through thoughts she chose to repeat and emotions she chose to sustain. She understood then that manifestation doesn't begin with money, love, or success. It begins with permission. Permission to believe differently. Permission to write a new story before it exists. Before we continue, take a moment to anchor this truth. Comment below, "My journal creates my future." Because what you declare consistently becomes what you live. And standing in the life she once wished for, she knew, this was never about a single wish. It was about becoming the version of herself who was finally ready to receive. What changed everything for her wasn't luck, talent, or perfect timing. It was a simple, repeatable practice she committed to daily, even when her emotions fluctuated. The power wasn't in complexity, it was in consistency. And that's what made the universe respond. The first step was writing every day in her journal manifestation as if her desired life already existed. Not someday. Not, I hope. She wrote in the present tense, calmly and clearly, training her mind to accept a new reality before it appeared. She didn't write long paragraphs at first. Sometimes just a few sentences. I am supported. I am aligned. I live in abundance. What mattered wasn't volume, it was emotional presence. She learned that words without feeling are just ink, but words with intention become instruction. After writing, she paused and visualized. Not forced images, not fantasy scenes, but sensations. How it would feel to wake up without fear. How peace would sit in her body. How confidence would change her posture. The universe responds to emotion faster than logic. Gratitude became the final anchor of the practice. She didn't wait for results to be grateful. She thanked the universe in advance, reinforcing trust instead of lack. Gratitude shifted her frequency from asking to receiving. Some days felt powerful. Others felt flat. And that was okay. She didn't stop because the practice wasn't about mood, it was about identity. Showing up daily told the universe, I'm serious about this version of me. She committed to this process for 21 days. Not because 21 is magic, but because repetition rewires belief. Each day built momentum. Each page reinforced alignment. Each moment of gratitude softened resistance. If doubt appeared, she didn't fight it. She acknowledged it, then returned to the practice. The goal wasn't perfection. It was direction. And direction, when sustained, creates transformation. This is why the technique works for anyone willing to apply it. You don't need special tools. Just a notebook, intention, and willingness to persist beyond initial discomfort. The universe meets clarity with opportunity. So if you're watching this and feeling called, start today. Write daily. Visualize calmly. Give thanks in advance. Do it for 21 days, and watch how your inner world begins to reorganize first. Because once your inner world shifts, the universe has no choice but to follow. After the excitement of the manifestation, something unexpected happened. Silence. Days passed without dramatic changes, without new announcements from the universe. No fireworks. No sudden expansion. Just life, unfolding quietly. And for the first time, she wondered if this stillness meant she had done something wrong. She kept her routines, but the emotional intensity softened. The urgency faded. And in that calm, a new kind of discomfort appeared, impatience. The mind that once begged for relief now demanded speed. If alignment is real, why does everything feel paused? She returned to her journal manifestation, expecting reassurance. Instead, she found consistency. The same affirmations. The same gratitude. The same intentional words. Nothing was missing. Nothing needed fixing. And that realization unsettled her more than chaos ever had. This was the phase no one talks about. The moment after belief but before expansion. Where nothing seems to move, yet everything is stabilizing beneath the surface. Like roots growing underground, unseen, essential. Old fears try to resurface during this time. The temptation to check constantly. To force outcomes. To look for proof instead of presence. She noticed how easily trust could turn into control if left unchecked. So she practiced patience deliberately. She reminded herself that alignment doesn't rush. That the universe doesn't respond to urgency, it responds to clarity and steadiness. Growth, she realized, isn't loud at this stage. It's precise. She continued writing, not to manifest more, but to remain aligned. Her journaling shifted from wanting to becoming. Less focus on outcomes. More focus on embodiment. Peace replaced anticipation. There were moments when she questioned if the best part was already over. If the magic had peaked. But something deeper whispered otherwise. This is integration, that inner voice said. This is learning to hold what you asked for. She began to appreciate the stillness. The absence of fear. The quiet confidence that no longer depended on external validation. For the first time, she felt stable without clinging. This period taught her that manifestation isn't just about receiving, it's about sustaining. About proving to yourself that you can remain aligned even when nothing is happening. And without realizing it, by honoring the silence instead of resisting it, she passed another test. One that prepared her for expansion far greater than what she had already received. As life stabilized, she realized that maintaining abundance required more awareness than manifesting it. The universe had responded, but now it was asking something different of her, consistency in who she was becoming. This phase wasn't about attracting more, it was about aligning deeper. She began to notice subtle misalignments. Old habits that didn't fit anymore. Conversations that drained her. Patterns of thinking that once felt normal but now felt heavy. The new identity she had stepped into required new standards. Saying no became an act of self-respect. Not every opportunity was aligned. Not every person deserved access to her energy. She understood that boundaries weren't rejection, they were protection of alignment. She adjusted her daily rituals, not out of fear, but out of intention. Morning moments of grounding. Evening reflections in her journal manifestation. The practice had evolved from manifesting desires to maintaining clarity. There were moments of guilt. Growth often brings it. When you outgrow versions of yourself, you also outgrow dynamics. She learned that guilt was not a sign of wrongdoing, it was a sign of transition. Her internal dialogue shifted again. Less reassurance. More authority. She didn't ask the universe for permission anymore. She moved as someone who expected support, not as someone hoping for mercy. This adjustment wasn't visible from the outside. No one applauded it. But internally, it was revolutionary. She was no longer reacting to life, she was directing her energy intentionally. She noticed that the universe mirrored her clarity. The clearer she became about who she was and what she tolerated, the smoother things flowed. Resistance decreased. Opportunities aligned faster. She understood then that manifestation is sustained by identity, not desire. Desire initiates movement. Identity maintains it. And identity is refined through daily choices. By honoring this phase of adjustment, she anchored her new self deeply enough to support what was coming next, expansion that required stability, not desperation. Once stability settled in, something unexpected began to happen. The abundance she had aligned with didn't stay confined to one area of her life. It started to move outward, quietly influencing everything else, like a ripple expanding across still water. Her emotional state shifted first. Anxiety no longer dictated her decisions. Even when challenges appeared, they didn't hijack her nervous system the way they used to. Peace became her baseline, not a temporary escape. Relationships began to transform as well. Some connections softened and grew stronger, rooted in mutual respect and authenticity. Others naturally faded, not through conflict, but through misalignment. She learned that not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next chapter. Her health responded to the internal changes. She slept better, breathed deeper, listened to her body with more compassion. The constant tension she once carried began to dissolve, replaced by presence and self-trust. Creativity returned in unexpected ways. Ideas flowed without force. Inspiration came during ordinary moments. She realized that alignment doesn't just attract things, it unlocks parts of you that were dormant under stress and survival. She noticed how the universe began to support her in subtle but consistent ways. Conversations aligned. Timing worked in her favor. Situations resolved themselves without struggle. Life felt cooperative rather than confrontational. Gratitude deepened during this phase. Not the performative kind, but a quiet appreciation for balance. She continued writing in her journal manifestation, now documenting evidence instead of desires. Proof replaced hope. This domino effect taught her a powerful truth: manifestation is holistic. When you shift your inner world, the universe doesn't respond partially. It responds completely, across every layer of your life. She understood then that the wish she once made wasn't limited to one outcome. It was an invitation for total realignment. And the universe had accepted it fully. Standing in this expanded version of her life, she felt something she had never experienced before: harmony. Not perfection, but coherence. Everything finally made sense together. At this stage, she realized that effort was no longer the missing piece. Control was. The more she tried to manage every outcome, the heavier things felt. And the more she softened her grip, the more fluid life became. Detachment wasn't giving up, it was trusting what she had already built. She noticed how often the mind tried to interfere. Checking timelines. Measuring progress. Comparing her pace to imagined expectations. Each time she tightened control, alignment felt strained. Each time she released it, peace returned. Detachment asked something deeper of her: surrender without resignation. To stay committed to the vision while releasing attachment to how and when it would unfold. This balance required maturity, not passivity. She returned to her journal manifestation with a different intention. Not to script outcomes, but to reaffirm trust. Her writing became softer. More spacious. Less directive. She wrote, "I allow the universe to surprise me." This shift created immediate relief. The pressure to perform spiritually dissolved. She no longer felt responsible for orchestrating miracles. Her only responsibility was alignment, the rest belonged to the universe. Moments of stillness became sacred. Silence no longer triggered anxiety. It felt supportive, like a pause designed for integration. She learned that quiet seasons aren't empty, they are calibrating. When challenges appeared, she met them differently. Without panic. Without urgency. She responded instead of reacting. And in doing so, problems resolved with less resistance than before. She recognized that detachment didn't weaken desire, it purified it. Wanting no longer came from fear of lack, but from clarity of preference. That distinction changed everything. The universe responded instantly to this surrender. Opportunities arrived without struggle. Solutions appeared without force. What once required effort now required presence. By letting go of control, she unlocked a deeper flow. One where trust replaced tension, and alignment replaced anxiety. And in that space, expansion prepared itself quietly. If she could sit across from the version of herself who once felt lost, she wouldn't rush to give advice. She would listen first. She would let that version speak about fear, exhaustion, and the quiet shame of feeling stuck. Because she knows now that being seen is often more healing than being fixed. She would tell her that nothing was wrong with her intuition, only that it had been buried under survival. That the doubt she felt wasn't weakness, but conditioning. Years of believing that safety comes from control, not trust. And that unlearning this takes time. She would explain that the silence she once feared was never abandonment. It was preparation. A pause where the universe reorganized what words couldn't yet explain. That the emptiness she felt wasn't a void, it was space being made. She would say that writing in the journal manifestation wasn't pretending. It was remembering. Remembering an identity that existed before fear took the lead. Every sentence written in the present tense was a bridge between who she was and who she was becoming. She would confess that the breakdowns were necessary. That losing what felt stable was the only way to release what was limiting. Not everything that collapses is a failure. Some things fall so better things can stand. She would remind her that impatience doesn't mean misalignment. It means growth is happening faster than the nervous system can process. And that it's okay to feel uncomfortable while expanding, that's how you know you're not shrinking anymore. She would reassure her that the universe never tested her to punish her. Every test was an invitation to choose trust again. To choose identity over emotion. To choose alignment even when evidence disappeared. She would say this most gently, you don't need to become worthy. You already are. The work was never about earning abundance, but about allowing it to find her without resistance. She would thank her past self for not giving up, especially on the days when persistence felt meaningless. Those were the days that mattered most. The days that built the future quietly. And finally, she would smile and say, everything you were afraid of losing led you exactly where you needed to be. Nothing was wasted. Not the tears. Not the waiting. Not even the doubt. At this point in the story, something subtle happens. The line between her life and yours begins to blur. Because the truth is, her journey was never meant to be admired from a distance. It was meant to reflect something already stirring inside you, a recognition you might not yet have words for. You may see parts of yourself in her exhaustion. In the waiting. In the quiet moments where hope feels fragile but refuses to disappear. That's not coincidence. Stories resonate because they activate memory, not of the past, but of potential. Just like her, you didn't arrive here by accident. You didn't find this story randomly. Something in you is listening right now, even if your mind is still questioning. The universe often speaks first through resonance, not certainty. You may be in the phase where nothing seems to be happening. Or where things recently fell apart. Or where alignment feels close but not fully tangible yet. Wherever you are, it's part of the same cycle: initiation, release, embodiment. Her transformation didn't begin when results appeared. It began the moment she chose to see herself differently. The same invitation exists for you now. Not to copy her path, but to recognize your own readiness. If her wish moved an entire year, imagine what consistent intention could move in your life. Not overnight. Not magically. But deliberately. Day by day. Thought by thought. Choice by choice. This is where stories stop being entertainment and become mirrors. The discomfort you feel right now isn't pressure, it's alignment asking for permission. Permission to expand beyond the version of yourself that learned to survive. You don't need to know every step. She didn't. You only need to honor the one you're standing on. Trust is not blind faith, it's informed courage. Courage built through repetition, not perfection. If you've been waiting for a sign, let this be gentle confirmation: awareness always comes before change. And awareness is already active in you now. Something has already shifted. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you are beneath the noise, the fear, and the old narratives. And when you choose that version consistently, the universe responds without hesitation. Nothing in her journey happened by accident. Not the delays. Not the losses. Not even the moments that felt unbearably unfair. Every experience shaped her perception, refined her identity, and prepared her nervous system to hold what she once only dared to imagine. Destiny didn't arrive suddenly, it unfolded in response to choice. She learned that the universe doesn't respond to wishes whispered once and forgotten. It responds to alignment practiced daily. To thoughts repeated with intention. To emotions sustained long enough to become belief. The year didn't move because she hoped, it moved because she embodied. Looking back, she could trace every turning point to a decision made in uncertainty. Writing when doubt was loud. Trusting when evidence was absent. Choosing identity over circumstance. Those moments were invisible to others, but they were loud to the universe. Her story stands as proof that manifestation is not about escaping reality, it's about reshaping it from the inside out. When the inner world changes, the outer world reorganizes. Always. Without exception. The timing may differ, but the principle never does. If this story stirred something in you, honor it. Stay with that feeling. Let it inform your next step. If you feel called, support this space by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who might need this reminder today. And if you're ready to begin, say it out loud or write it down, I choose alignment over fear. Your declaration matters. Your attention matters. Your consistency matters. Share this story not because it promises miracles, but because it reveals a process. A process anyone can apply. A process rooted in awareness, intention, and patience. The universe meets those qualities with opportunity. Remember, you don't need to force outcomes. You need to sustain identity. The future responds to who you are becoming, not to who you were taught to be. And that choice is available to you in every moment. This story wasn't meant to end with her success. It was meant to begin with your awareness. Because once awareness arrives, change is inevitable. She made one wish, and the universe moved an entire year. Not because the wish was special, but because she finally was.